Welcome back to the Fast Break Podcast. I'm Ari Betterly here with Ryan Costello and Sam Elster for the Hoosier Network. This is our first time being back here in about a month, so we're ready to unpack everything to do with IU women's basketball today. So take it away with how was everybody's break? I'm dying to know, tell me about your break. I just want to know.
I feel like I did nothing, just really needed that couple weeks of chilling. I mean, I saw some family, went back to the East Coast, visit Pennsylvania. That was nice. But just watching a lot of Gossip Girl and Netflix and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I feel like mine was very chill. So I went to California with family in the beginning
Love
of the
that.
break, but then after that, literally did nothing. Watched sports, caught up on a lot of sleep. A lot of sleep. What about you, Ari?
Honestly, I'm going to segue with the sleep. Loved it. It was so important. I watched a lot of college football with my family. We had some pizza nights.
Oh, fun.
Watched my sister play cheer at the basketball game. So very wholesome events.
Aw.
And then obviously came back and now ready to dive back in to this podcast with you guys. So let's kind of take it away with this first question here about what do you think the biggest thing we've learned from this team over the break into now this season is? Ryan, why don't you start off?
I think Terry Morin said it best after their first loss of the season, that she said, this is not the team of last year. She said that following the Harvard game. And I think that is being kind of shown throughout the beginning stages, now to the middle stages of Big Ten play. And you're not seeing them dominate Big Ten teams at home, maybe struggling a little bit against teams we've seen them beat before at home, like Illinois. So they are still just learning what success looks like for them.
Yeah. Sam, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, totally agree. This isn't the same team as last year. We've known that for a while now. But honestly, the biggest thing is that I think this team can really stick with big time programs like the UCLAs and USCs. Although, those weren't wins, I think that this team brings a lot of fight. And they just do, though, need to, know how to handle those little games, like a game like Illinois from this past week, handle those little games that they're capable of winning. And, I mean, obviously there's been Caroline Strickland who's been showing out, as a veteran coming from a Tennessee school in, big time SEC country.
Right.
I think that she really brings a great role into this team, and I think she's really stepped up in that role.
I agree.
What about you?
Yeah. I was just going to segue from that about how Caroline stepped up where, Lily Meister's kind of been struggling. And what I was going to say is she's shown, a lack of confidence in these past couple games that Terry Moore noted that she needed to step up in both offense and defense and that she was happy with keeping her on a bench spot and moving Caroline Strickland up. So I think definitely in that position, there needs to be some more growth to keep that offense alive. They can't just rely on, veterans like Sydney Parrish getting lots of rebounds for Lily Meister when she's not getting them. So I think that's something that's important. I mean, and we've all said it. The Big Ten is a gauntlet this year. The fact that USC and UCLA are in the conference is tough in itself, but the fact that Indiana was able to put up a fight against both these teams and keep it close is something that means they're growing and they're showing strides in their gameplay, but it also means that they're still not quite to their full potential, I think, yet. And, a lot of these players are kind of falling short in some areas of gameplay and not being overall consistent. I'd like to see them be a little more consistent, And last but not least, I think they've showed their versatility. I mean, you've had players be injured this season, and you've had players who are going to be out for the rest of the season. But now I think they're finally starting to figure out that lineup they really like, and they'll carry through the rest of the Big Ten season.
Your point about consistency leads me into the next question. So what do you guys
nice segue there.
think the team needs to work on the most?
Yeah.
Seeing this last month of play.
Yeah, I think for me, honestly, the defense. I mean, the rebounding has been, definitely has a lot to work on. But honestly, a lot of the players have been getting into foul trouble really early on. Almost in 2 fouls in the first quarter, which is not great at all because I think that just brings the confidence of the team completely straight down. And obviously the shot selection, a little bit of a tongue twister, from this team has been also very questionable.
You're right about the momentum
Yes.
with the fouls. In the USC game, some people got into foul trouble, and the UCLA game and other games that they were close and that they ended up losing. And that just is a momentum killer.
Yeah, while some of the officiating and all that can be questionable, this team kind of can't let that take over. Can't let arguing with the refs and all of that really lose the momentum on the court.
Yeah, Sydney Parrish made that point in the
Yeah.
Illinois presser that they just need to do their own game.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I feel like my point is putting all the pieces together. Like against USC, they were able to limit Juju Watkins and Kiki Ierofin. I just said her last name wrong. I'm sorry, Kiki, if you're actually listening to this.
Kiki's gonna hate on you now. I'm kidding.
Oh
I'm
well.
kidding.
But they defended them pretty well. They were efficient in the game, but turnovers and the points that USC and then UCLA, it was a common trend in both games. The points that they got off those really just costed Indiana the game.
Yeah. And I would agree with you on that, Ryan. I think you both have made excellent points about just the turnovers and then, having the foul trouble. Those are the only stats that have popped across the board, and including free throws, which is my other point, that have ranged differently than the two teams of UCLA and USC. And I think that's the reason they can't close out these games and close out these wins is when you're turning over the ball in double digits, when you're not performing on the three-point free throw line. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then you can also not, just execute at the end. It's going to hinder you from the success in winning those big games in those high pressure moments where you see them slipping up with those 3-point shots that like Yarden Garzone was trying to make in the last couple minutes and, losing in 2 to 4 points. Ranges because they can't finish through. So I'd really like to see that from them. And just like Terry Moyne said, playing a full rounded game in the 40 minutes they're on the court, like not letting an Illinois game and a UCLA or USC game be any different because they obviously played two different teams, but they had two different energy levels, which I think should be the same throughout the entire season.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that leads to a good point about Chloe Moore McNeil with shooting, not her, but and a team as the whole. It was a point that she made in the press conference against USC, saying that they need to go into or feed into the people that are having shooting slumps and help bring their confidence up as
I
a
like
whole,
that
because
too.
that will really help them when they're struggling and they're not hitting those open looks that they're getting in games.
Yeah. Even when Terry was asked during the press conference, someone asked about Yarden and what she tells her when she's having a poor shooting performance like she did against USC. She said, just to keep on shooting. Like, you're going to get those, not going to make every single shot, but if you're taking the right shot, they'll fall.
Yeah, and she even said, like, they had some great looks in that game that we just watched yesterday. And, I mean, they have the potential, or 2 days ago, they had the potential to, keep that going. But then, like you said, when they lacked confidence or didn't seem like it was going down, it was just kind of a rut. And then they would go on a run again, and then there'd be another rut. So definitely things that this team needs to work on moving forward in a very tough stretch. They're going to the West Coast for the first time. Indiana's going to be battling teams like Oregon and Washington on the road. So, guys, let's preview these next 2 games because they're highly important, I think, in the direction IU season's going to go. Ryan, why don't you start off?
Yeah, like you said, both of these teams are also on the bubble right now or hunting for a tournament bid. So these are games away, especially that Indiana needs to lock up and they need to go on like a little bit of a winning streak. And I feel like going to the West Coast and getting some momentum there would be good. But their first game is on Friday at 9 p.m. against Oregon. And Oregon's a pretty solid team and pretty if you stack them up against each other, they're pretty similar. They're 36 in the net, IU's 39. They're also looking for quality wins because they're 1-4 in the quad one, and IU's 2-3. So they both really need this win. And one good point to make is that Oregon is 12-1 at home, so that's something to think about. That they're not going to let an away team just come in there and take the ball away from them and take the win away from them. And they showed that in their last game, coming back down from 15 against Iowa, and they held them without a bucket for 10 minutes. So they really have shown that defensive edge. And then one more thing before I let you guys jump in. They have a big who is 6'8", and that I feel like that physicality and just that size will bother Indiana's front court because we've seen that in games against USC and UCLA.
I was going to say the exact same thing. I think it's been hard for those guarding those tall players in the post. These past couple games, like Lauren Betts was a great example. Every time they would try to touch her, they'd draw a foul. And so it's going to be interesting if they change that up or try to, I don't know, square up differently on defense because they can't keep drawing those fouls against someone that's driving into the post and, getting those kind of layups and shots.
Yeah, I feel like it'll be interesting to see maybe if Terry Morton switches it up and maybe puts both Caroline and Lily on the court at the same time. I don't think we've seen that yet this season.
No, we haven't.
So maybe to try and, limit a player who stands at 6'8", try and double team her with maybe two of the, more dominant bigs on the team. So that could be interesting.
Another interesting thing to note is that they have a lot of depth. They have 10 players who average 4 or more points and then 9 players who average 10 or more minutes. And Indiana, they were using their bench a lot in non-conference, but we've seen the bench shrink a lot, and now they're only doing the starter and like 2 other players. It's like a 7-person, 7-person lineup. So it'll be interesting to see how they react to that.
Yeah,
I agree. And also something that I think IU needs to take advantage of in this game is, their free throw. I keep messing this up today, guys. I am silly. The 3-point percentage, Indiana can shoot the ball well outside the arc, but Oregon is known to be the second worst 3-point shooting team in the conference. So if they're able to get their shot well and, like Terry Morin said, to shoot the ball like they need to, that might give them a little upper echelon edge against this Oregon team.
Yeah. And that helps with their whole offense. If they are hitting those shots, then there's going to be more open looks because they're going to need to go out and guard Indiana on the 3-point lane.
And stay away from their 6'8" player.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they match up against it. And then going into the next game after Oregon against Washington, I think that'll be more of a less crazy environment, obviously, from traveling from Oregon to Washington. But I think it'll be a fun game against Washington because I feel like they kind of match up a little bit more equally than they do to Oregon. I mean, they also have similar losses to the top-ranked, UCLA. But in quad 1 games so far this season, Washington's only 1-4 while Indiana's 2-3. So I think that, maybe they'll catch the Huskies off guard and hopefully come out with a win.
One thing that Indiana does need to look out for is Washington is the best 3-point shooting team in the conference at 36%. So if they're not hitting their shots and Indiana is, then switch that around. If Washington's hitting their shot.
We are jumbled today.
And Indiana is not. It's the first one back.
Right?
I feel like we need to work out the kinks, not be as rusty. If they're making their shots and Indiana isn't, then it could be a long night for the Hoosiers. So they need to make sure they're guarding those people out on the line.
Right. And they have players who can shoot the ball well. I mean, they have Sylvia Sellers, who's a big threat. She's averaging 16.8 points a game, kind of similar to a Yarden zone, shooting well every game, getting double digits every game. So I'm interested to see this matchup. And like you said, Sam, they have very similar losses and to UCLA by 9 points. That's right around where Indiana's standing. So I think this will be a similar matched up battle. And it's a matter of Indiana can play well on the road and handle the pressure of not being in the same time zone, and, understanding that these are 2 new teams in the conference and how to beat them too. So, and I think that they can do it. I just think,
it's all about that confidence.
It is all about that confidence.
Which I feel like is a part of the thing that the mentality of the team, I feel like maybe has gotten a little bit shaken, but they're not showing that confidence like I feel like we've seen at points and increments in this season.
Yeah. And a point that has been written in this, our little document that we talk about this podcast is that this is not a marathon, it's a sprint, is what Terry Morin said. And I think that, emulates this entire season very well. They sometimes have been sprinting in these really big games that they need to execute well in, but then they're not keeping that speed up for those other games. So they need to keep running at a nice pace here against these 2 teams in order to come home and then keep that momentum going at Assembly Hall, because they can't just rely on their fans like they did this past 2 games, to perform well.
Because they've lost 3 games at home in a row, which is not something we've seen since 2018-2019 season.
Yeah.
A long time. So it's been confusing.
Yeah, so hopefully they'll go on the road, come out 2-0. I mean, they have a good time in between. The games are on Friday and then Monday, so they have time to travel in between, get adjusted. Terry Morin said they were leaving tomorrow for a game that's on Friday. So it seems as if they're really managing, the traveling onto the West Coast very nice.
Yeah, it is nice that they played on Sunday and they don't play until Friday. They have a nice break for their bodies, get some practices in. But that leads me into our next point. Hot topics. I know you guys love them. It's your favorite part of the podcast, or at least my favorite part of the podcast.
Oh, totally. My favorite. Yeah.
Definitely.
It kind of goes along with what we've been talking about, but what do you think Indiana needs to work on and improve the most? What is hurting them the most in their season thus far?
I think, honestly, controlling the pace of the game. They're not, against the teams that they've lost against, UCLA, USC, Illinois, even looking back at Harvard, they weren't controlling the pace. They weren't playing their own brand of basketball. They're playing high tempo, especially just speaking on recency. USC, I mean, both teams were absolutely gassed at points because they were just playing at such a high.
That was such a fast-paced level
it was
of
a
gameplay,
fast-paced game, and I think that Indiana's not used to that, and that's not their game style, which is totally okay. But I think that it gets them overstimulated and honestly just gets them out of control, and I think that's where the turnovers really come from.
Yeah, and I would agree with you, Sam. I think that these turnovers are coming from like them not playing their brand of basketball and not relaxing when they need to. I think sometimes their 3-point shots have been a little rushed at times.
Yeah.
Like they're just launching the ball and then it will miss, and letting their defense do their job and taking that time to shoot the three when they need to. But I mean, from Terry Moore literally said, we just need to make shots. It's that simple. But it's a matter of having that confidence we keep saying over and over again, and having that team chemistry of knowing like, okay, she's not doing well, then I need to step up. And it can't always be the same veterans where it seemed like Chloe Moore McNeil and Sydney Parrish are always the ones trying to rally them up. I mean, it's obviously somewhat their job, but to an extent other people need to step up too.
Yeah, the captain, it starts at the captains, but the rest of the team needs to carry that same mentality, because if you just have two people, it's going to be a lot. Oh, so sorry.
now we're hitting microphones on the show. Whoa.
It's going to be a lot on their backs. And like you said, with shooting and shot selection, it just seems, I don't know, like sometimes, like you said, they're just chucking the ball up and then there's so much time left on the shot clock. And it's like, I don't think that's what we drew up. So I think they just need to focus in and be kind of more within themselves. I don't know. I feel like that didn't make sense. But
no, it does make sense. I feel like if you feel confident in your shot and then what your teammates have to do or their defense, then you should feel confident in taking an extra second to wind up whatever you're throwing down. But I mean, if you're not, then you're obviously not comfortable.
They've shown in these games against USC and UCLA that they're
close. That close.
There's just small little things like turnovers and
free
not
throws.
Making shots and free throws and stuff like that they're missing, and then that's the reason they're losing the games.
Yeah.
But that leads me into the next point. So with these things that they need to improve on, who or what part of their game needs to step up the most in order for them to go on a win streak or be in a good place come March?
Yeah, I think that the person that first came to mind for me was Shea Chesky. I think that she's had a great season so far. Obviously, I've said it time and time again. She kind of does everything on the floor, but I think that the scoring has been a little bit inconsistent. She's averaging almost 12 points per game, but it felt like before the season she was coming in and going to be like this sharpshooter, really able to like put up some big buckets.
type.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, I feel like in the games like USC or like UCLA, she has put up some good buckets, but she's doing a little bit more of shot creating than, setting herself up, obviously looking for teammates and stuff. But I think that, as we enter the next, half of the Big Ten conference play, I think, she really has to start putting up more shots.
Yeah. Building off that, another player I think that just needs to step up. I've said it before. I think, both post players, Lily Meister and Caroline Striplin, I think there's been some shiny moments in Caroline. And even with Lily during the USC game when she shot a 3 out of nowhere and then drew the foul. And that was like something that they need to see from her every single time. And with a position like that was so predominant for this Hoosier team the past couple of years to now, it's like, okay, obviously they're trying to figure out the outside court, but now let's focus in on the post play as well. And I think once they put those pieces together, whether it is playing half and half time or just letting Caroline take over, then that will be something that they take on in these next couple of games and hopefully grow even more in.
I agree 100% with you. That was actually also my point. But
Let's go.
Another thing I want to say is, like you said, because they're not showing up, they become a liability on the court at times, when last year they were able to just throw it into Mackenzie Holmes if they didn't have a good shot look or a good shot selection. They were able to just throw it into her, and they don't really have that because I don't know if it's confidence levels, but we saw a flash, like you said, in the USC game when Lily Meister got 7 points at the end of the third quarter, and we thought that would translate over, and then it didn't really come out to happen. So
Yeah, I mean, when she drained that 3, Ari didn't even realize it was Lily that made that at first.
I know. We were sitting up in Section K, and my mouth goes, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, that's Lily. And Sam was
Yeah.
like, it is Ari.
Yeah, I mean, when she put that up, I was like, good for her. And then it fell, and I was like, okay.
I hope that they show that play in film, like her hitting that shot, because I feel like that will really help with the confidence.
Yeah, I
and then
think
she'll
that sparked it a
maybe
lot.
hear how loud Assembly Hall and how many people are there supporting her,
Yeah.
because
Exactly.
I feel like she's there this close, but it's just that
it's
confidence factor.
It sounds like more of a mental thing than like a physical ability
Totally.
thing.
Yeah.
So,
Totally.
yeah.
And then last one, not least, we still have a decent
Chunk?
they're 4-3, so
Yeah.
we have 11 more Big Ten games. What game are you guys looking forward to the most? Ari, I'll go to you first.
Okay. I thought about this a lot, and there's so much to the season left. Away games, home games, but I had to pick an away game that, Ryan, you might like. You've been talking about her all season. Silas Ward's, the freshman on Michigan. I want to see how they play against her. I mean, we've seen them play against UCLA, Lauren Betts now. We've seen them play against USC, Juju Watt. I want to see them play against her, who's averaging 15.4 points right now, and how they do traveling up, to Michigan and seeing that level of competition, because obviously last year they lost to them in the Big Ten tournament and they weren't expecting to at all. So this year tables have turned a little bit and maybe they'll be out for revenge against Michigan.
And a similar trend with last year, they didn't have Mackenzie had gotten hurt at the end of the regular season.
Right.
They didn't have her I think they subbed her in the last couple minutes of the game.
Yeah,
but they didn't
barely.
They didn't have her for the majority of the game. So not that they won't have anyone there, but if they don't have the presence that she had, even though both teams are a little bit different, that might be something that they struggle with a little bit. But I'll go into my team, and then I'll let Sam close this out. My team is Nebraska. Last year, IU shot lights out at Nebraska when they played them. But this year, Alexis Markowski has been there for the last couple years, and she's a really great physical big. So I'm interested to see if Indiana's front court continues to show up, how they handle her. And then also, it's their first game back at home, and I don't feel like they're want to lose 4 straight at home. I don't know how long it's been since they last did that. So
I don't think they want to do that either, honestly. No.
I definitely probably think that Terry Morin does not want that either
No.
on her
No.
team either. But my team is going to be Rutgers. Although they are the last team in the Big Ten, I think that it's going to be really fun. Assembly Hall having Kaiomi McMiller. She's been so great as a freshman. Obviously averaging 19 points on 42% shooting. And against Nebraska, she had 33 points, which was literally, I think it was like last week that she did that. So I think that'll be a really fun matchup, and hopefully a game where Indiana can really, kind of take control. This is a little bit more of a not as strong team in the Big Ten, but with a really great player like McMiller. I think it'll be a fun matchup to see how Claymore McNeil guards her. I thought it was awesome how she guarded Juju Watkins.
I was just about to say
I'm
that,
wondering how if Terry Morin will do a similar game plan for a player like McMiller.
Yeah, but like Terry Morin said in her press conference, the Big Ten is a tough conference,
It
so they
is.
can't take
They
a night
can't
off,
take it.
and they could lose to a team of Rutgers caliber.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say, although they shouldn't have lost at home to Illinois, in my opinion, I think that, they lost to Illinois in their home court last year. So maybe that'll be the last smaller team that you wouldn't expect them to lose to this year.
Yeah.
Maybe. But
Maybe these 3 in a row at home will humble them and help motivate them for the rest of the season.
I agree. I think it's always good to get humbled.
Yep.
Be humble. Sit down.
I love shout out Kendrick Lamar.
Shout out Kendrick. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Fast Break podcast. I'm Ari Betterly here with Ryan Costello and Sam Elster for the Hoosier Network, and we will catch you next time on an episode of the Fast Break.
Yay.